What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Legends of Tomorrow, Season 5, Episode 8, Romeo versus Juliet, The Dawn of Justness. I'll admit, I like that episode title. But you see what happens, though? I mean, you introduce Mona, and suddenly everything just goes to shit. Because honestly, I'll admit, the first 3/4 of this episode, I hated. Not just her showing up, but just everything. I mean, it's all so dumb. You have a couple funny scenes here and there, with Ray trying to tell everyone that he's moving out with Nora, and Zari's like taking up the bathroom, which kind of weird that they only have one bathroom on the ship. Like, this is the first time that they've dealt with bathroom issues before when you have so many people using one bath. I don't think so. I don't think so. This would have been a thing a lot more. Maybe it has been, and I've just forgotten because it's been a long time since I've watched this show. But anyways, but no, I mean, there were some funny moments here and there throughout, but the whole, like, Ray keeping it from Nate that he's leaving the ship, like, it's just been done. Been done to death, really. It's a sitcom trope that I'm not really a big fan of because it's normally not handled that funny. And in this case, I don't really think it was handled that funny either, so... but then you've got, everybody going to the bar, and they get drunk, they do some stupid stuff, they mess up everything. The girls are having their bachelorette party, I guess, and they're just, I don't know, it was just sort of random. They're all dancing and partying, and they hired a stripper for some reason. I don't know. So just all of that going on, and it leads to, Shakespeare messing up, or not messing up, but creating these different plays, but then when they go back to fix it, it turns out that apparently he didn't have the funding, so it's like, well, hang on a minute. If he wasn't going to have the funding anyway, then how come he still became a big thing with the superhero stories? Like, why is that a thing? But little plot holes here and there that I come to expect in a show like this when you play as loose with time travel as they tend to do. But then once the play started, I feel like that's where things started to get a little bit better. Um, for a few reasons. First of all, I'll admit I'm not a big fan of Romeo and Juliet. It's kind of funny because I actually have a few friends that are very into Shakespeare and they really like Shakespeare. And it tends to be the people that really like Shakespeare hate Romeo and Juliet, but the people that don't really know like much about Shakespeare's work, they love Romeo and Juliet. I'm kind of in between. I don't know much about Shakespeare's like other works. I know a bit about like Hamlet and Macbeth and a few of the other more popular ones, but I do not like Romeo and Juliet as a story. Honestly, I guess one of the very few people in the world who hated West Side Story the movie, and part of that is because of how much I hate Romeo and Juliet's just everything in it. Like, all the people in it are so terrible, except for your two leads, because they have to be so perfect compared to all the shitheads around the world. I hate that setup, but I enjoyed seeing the legends put on the play because it is funny to see Mick as the narrator, and then you've got Bayrod coming out as, I think, Mercutio, having Constantine be Romeo, and then having Nate first start off as Juliet. Zari as well, showing that she actually is a little bit deeper than they have shown her most of this season. She does have training in classical, I guess, theater, so she understands the characters a lot more, and she can sort of talk to Nate about all that stuff. So there were just some funny moments. There was one weird line where when Zari comes out as Juliet, Shakespeare's like, "Is that a man?" Charlie's like, "Does it matter?" I'm like, "What? Are you trying to make some statement here? Like, who cares what gender they are? If you think they're attractive, go for it." Because that's not generally how most people view things. Because if I'm going after somebody, I'm going after them in the mindset of I'm going to marry them and have kids with them one day. And if that one person, even if I'm attracted to them, if they can't do that, like, it does sort of matter. And I get, that's kind of what there's been a kind of more of a push for, is like, oh, gender shouldn't matter. You should be, and I'm just, whatever. I'm not going to get into that whole thing right now. But after Nate leaves, though, it really did start to get to me a little bit that, Ray is leaving the ship. And that final scene between Ray and Nate, like, I get they're doing sort of the funny thing where it's like, oh, Romeo and Juliet are going through their bit during the play while Nate and Ray are going through their little thing, and it's funny because it's like, oh, that's so cute. But honestly, it was very well acted, and they put aside the laughs for a second. Yes, they were making the comparisons there, but overall, I mean, just the acting between Ray and Nate was pitch perfect. It was just that true feeling of that friend that you can't stand to think of life without him. I have several friends like that I can't imagine where I would be if they weren't in my life. And it's such a touching feeling. And again, both of them, Brandon Routh and I think Nick Zano, I think is his name. Both of them just nailed this scene in general. Like it really got to me. When when they hugged and you just see the tears streaming down Ray's face, I'm like, oh God, oh, that hurt. that really did hit me right here in the feels. So yeah, that whole final part, it didn't make up for all the stupidity I had to put up with before that, but it definitely did at least leave me in a feeling of, okay, I didn't hate this episode as much as I thought I was going to at the beginning of it when Mona shows back up and they start doing all this stupid stuff in the bar. So at least it ended on a good note, because most of the time if something ends on a good note, you tend to forget about a lot of your gripes that were happening previously. But as far as other pieces of this episode, first of all, you've got Astra talking with this woman who I don't think we know who she is. Obviously, she's the one that had Constantine's token opened up. I feel like she's gonna be one of the Fates. That's just kind of my initial gut reaction. I don't know if that's confirmed or denied already, but that's just how I feel. Is like she seems to be very important, so she's probably gonna be one of the Fates, which does make me wonder: have we already met the third Fate and we just don't know it yet? I don't know. Just curious, but yeah, I mean, their whole story, she helps Astra see what John is looking for, and kind of manipulates her at the end, like, oh, he could rewrite your whole life. Do you trust John to do that? So yeah, kind of interesting there. Making his kid, we do get a little bit more from him. He does want to be a part of her life, but he actually has a pretty somber moment at the end whenever he reveals his burn scars and is like, yeah, good parenting doesn't run in my family. Which, to be fair, does make a bit of sense, because you either go so opposite from what your parents did that it ends up backfiring, or you end up just like your parents when it comes to parenting. You end up doing a lot of the stuff that your parents did for you. So I can kind of get that feeling, of I had such a rough childhood. My dad was awful. I don't want to be that for her. So it's better that I stay out of her life so that way I don't have to be that. But on that same kind of note, she is a bit older now. In modern days, she is not at a point where she's young and he has to worry about actually raising like a little kid. Now, granted, he could go back in time and be there for her when she was a little kid. But I don't know, just I feel like when it comes to raising a kid, that part is already done if he wants to step back into her life now. It will make it a bit easier because he doesn't have to worry about, oh, what am I going to teach this kid growing up, because she looked like she was probably a young adult, like maybe early 20s. So, yeah, that part of her life, she's already grown past anything that he might have to worry about the child rearing phase. So I do think we're probably going to see him go be with her a little bit more. I can't imagine that they're taking him off the ship too, because just like I said, whenever Sarah was talking about the job in Star City, I don't see them getting rid of Ray and somebody else. Like, it's just going to be Ray probably. Granted that maybe that's how the season ends, is everybody starts to have all of these different things that are happening in their own lives, and they just decide, you know what? I want to go actually live my life now. I want to go do something outside of the Legends. And so maybe that's how this season will end, is everybody sort of going their separate ways for now, because they each have their own lives to live. So I don't know. We'll see it, but it's definitely got me thinking about where this season is going as a whole. But that's about it for this first episode. On to the second one. See you there. Now, episode 9, Zari, Not Zari. I'm gonna lie, after the last one, The Dawn of Justness, this one kind of hurts. But with that being said, this episode overall, much better than the last one. The only story for me that didn't, I don't know, it just because it didn't really go anywhere, I guess, is Mick's story. I still really find the whole situation funny. Just because, I mean, Mick as a father is just a funny concept. And so, him returning with the teddy bear with its head ripped off was just hilarious to me. He's just sitting there, strip the head off the bear. It got me rolling. So, as far as the story, though, like, he tries to go back in, he tries to be a better father, just be there throughout her life. But ultimately, the problem is he's not there permanently. So it really is leaning towards he's gonna have to just go be with her for him to really be a good father, which would mean that Mick would be leaving the show too. And again, I just don't know if Ray and Mick both leaving the show is gonna be a good choice for this season. I don't know. I guess we'll see how they handle it. But yeah, that was the only part of this episode that I was just like, well, I feel like there was no real resolution there. But everything else was really interesting. First of all, one of the weird things is the supernatural tie-in. I don't know, just it seemed very random. It's like, oh look, Supernatural's filming here. I wonder if we'll see Dean and Sam. And then they have like the car there. I don't know much about Supernatural. I'm actually gonna start getting into it at some point because I have some of my friends are like huge Supernatural fans. They're like, you gotta watch it, you'll love it. And so I am gonna watch it at some point. But of course, I've got to catch up on all the shows that I review first. So, but yeah, no real like aside from the car, there was nothing else that really was supernatural related. I don't know. It seemed very weird that they had that tie-in and then didn't actually have any of the actors from the show up. I don't know. It just seemed odd to me. I was just, why supernatural? What was the point of that? Maybe it's just because that's where they were. Is they visited this place where Supernatural was filming, and they're just like, you know what? Let's just throw this in for a fun little Easter egg. Also, apparently, Mortal Kombat like paid these Arrowverse shows because it was in Batwoman and now it's in this episode with Zari. So I guess they were trying to promote their. What would this have been? Would that have been Mortal Kombat 10 or 11 at this time? I don't remember. But anyways, so all of the stuff though leading up to that finale, that final moment where they managed to stop Atropos, very, very well set up. A little confusing at one point, and that was after John went into battle with her. All of a sudden, you see him show up, and he's like, oh, we got to get out of here before she realizes I'm not bleeding on the bank. And then they cut to John bleeding on the bank. And so, for a second, I was like, okay, so this is, like, did he set up a decoy or something? But then they played some ominous music, and then they kept showing John, like, smirking behind them. I'm like, oh, so she shapeshifted into John. That wasn't very clear. Like, I don't know, just from what he said, and then they cut to his body, I just assumed that we were looking at his decoy. I didn't think that, oh no, this is the real John, which means that John's a fake. I didn't really get that sense. Like, maybe if they cut to John lying on the beach and then cut back to Atropos as John and maybe have her, like, I don't know, do a little shapeshift or something like that. I don't know. Just something that I guess would have helped me realize a bit better, like, what you're trying to show. Because I got it eventually after a few looks here and there, but it felt like they wanted me to realize it when we saw his body, and I didn't get that feeling from it. And then the other kind of, I guess, weird moment that maybe will come back later, I'm not sure, is when Sarah gets attacked and sees Atropos in her full godly form. Like, she doesn't die. And apparently, normally when she does that, like, it burns whoever it is from the inside out. So no real sense of why that is yet. My only thought at the moment is that because she's a paragon from Crisis, maybe somehow that makes her more powerful than human. Like, she's almost kind of a god because she helped restart the universe. I don't know. I just something that came to mind was like, well, she is a paragon, so maybe that's why. But yeah, I mean, seeing Atropos though do her thing, very, very intimidating, very threatening to watch. She's just very good at what she does, and something about the way that she delivers her lines very deadpan, and her expression doesn't really change. It's funny because as Charlie's talking about, she's like, "Yeah, she is the one that ends, the your lifeline, and she enjoys doing it." I'm like, well, you can't really tell by watching her because it doesn't really look like she's enjoying anything. It looks like she has no emotion, but I think it sort of adds to her character and her intimidation factor a little bit that she's not really reacting to anything going on. So, but I was right about the other woman. That one is Lachesis, I think. I can't remember how to pronounce it now. It is funny hearing all these names. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember them from Persona. But yeah, so I was right about her. She was like, Charlie is the one, or Clotho is the one that basically determines somebody's fate. Lachesis is the one that determines how long their life is, and then Atropos is the one that cuts off their fate. So very interesting setup, and now that we know who all three of them are, good, good setup for what we're going to see as far as their reunion later on. But yeah, overall, I mean, just everything with Atropos tracking them, attacking Sarah, leaving John seemingly dead. There was a part of me that's like, okay, they're probably not going to kill them off right now. I wasn't sure how they were going to get around it, but I was pretty certain. But then whenever she goes onto the ship and Behrad is there with Zari, I just had this thought. I'm like, well, if they were going to show her ruthlessness and kill off one of the characters without it having too much of an impact on us, probably be Behrad since he's new this season. And sure enough, he tries to attack her with the sword, and she pulls out his, I guess this is his fate string or whatever, and just slices it. And she even makes the comment, you don't belong here, probably referring to the fact that he wasn't here previously before they changed history. So, yeah, very, very interesting. And honestly makes me wonder if she was going to come kill him anyway, since she is the one that decides fate. Him basically avoiding his fate by this timeline changing probably goes against what she wants and what she normally does. So I feel like he was probably doomed from the start just based on how she tackles problems. But yeah, I mean, as far as the ending of it with Behrad, Zari going through her little self-reflection, I guess. It's kind of a weird term, but it fits way too well. But her talking to her past self, finding out kind of how things were before the timeline changed, and ultimately that leading to the moment where she comes out of her trance and Behrad's gone. I mean, it was sad in that respect because of what it meant to Zari and how it affected her. Honestly, what it reminds me of is when Nora disappeared in Flash, season 5, I think. I didn't really care for Nora. Same here. It's not like I really liked Behrad. He was okay. I didn't hate him, but I didn't really care for Behrad. But I do care for Zari to some extent because I feel like she's become an interesting character. And honestly, in this episode, because she got to meet her other self, I feel like that turned her into a better character overall. Because so far, her new character has not been that great. But seeing that change, it did make me, okay, I care for you now because you're more like your past self, which is good. So seeing what it meant to her to lose her brother, especially because the timeline changed and that's what saved Behrad's life to begin with, and then it doesn't even matter because he still dies here, it definitely, the emotion was there. It got to me. Not as much as Ray leaving the team, but I still did feel for the situation, and seeing her basically go to Constantine and be like, look, I'm with you to the end because I want my brother back. And just seeing John's face, just like, look, we're up against two gods. I mean, it's not normal to see John this shaken up and this, I guess, worried about their prospects. Because normally he's not optimistic in the Ray sense where Ray's like, we can do this, guys, as long as we work together. John is more so like, it doesn't matter what obstacle he faces. He's just like, I'm John flipping Constantine. I can do whatever I want. I can make it out of any situation. Even he's like, okay, I don't know about this. Like, this is a lot more than I was expecting. So yeah, it's It's definitely good setup, and honestly, the action in the show is not always that great, but that final set piece for the action between Sarah and Atropos, and then opening up the door, Charlie coming in and slicing off her hand, sending her into the temporal zone. I mean, that was all very well set up. So, yeah, that's a glimpse ahead of what we're going to be seeing. I'm very excited for it. So, that's it for this episode. On to the final of these three. See you there. Now, episode 10, The Great British Fake Off. Instead of Bake Off, I get it. I guess I've never watched The Great British Bake Off, so I don't know how it ties in here. But another good episode. And honestly, this show is finally starting to get to that point where I'm like, I'm excited. I want to see more. I'm excited to see how the season's going to end. So I'm glad that it's gotten to that point, because honestly, there was definitely a point earlier on this season where I was a little worried that we're going to kind of stagnate a little bit and be boring and dull a bit like last season. But much better now. So all in all, very interesting episode. I like the fact that we have Enchantress on the show now, mainly because it gets to erase Miss Belly Dancer from the first Suicide Squad movie, at least in my mind. So yeah, I mean, interesting that she's the one that hid the last ring of fate. And then of course the two parts of the story, you've got Constantine and Zari trying to get the ring, while Ava, Mick, and Gary all try to essentially find out why Astra sent the Encores, which of course it wasn't her. But yeah, I mean, some interesting moving pieces. I don't really know what to expect from Astra here on out, because yes, she wants her mother back, but also she's not necessarily a good guy. So I don't know. I don't know what really to expect from her. I don't know if she's really on the good guy side, or if she's just here because she thinks it'll benefit her. I don't really trust her right now. So I guess we'll see ultimately what she ends up doing. But it seems like she at least is in it for herself, if nothing else, which is a good thing, because Lachesis was offering her all this power and being the third sister, basically taking Charlie's spot. And honestly, there was a part of me like, that would be tempting for somebody like Astra, who seems to enjoy all this power, but it appears wanting to see her mom again slightly trumps that right now, which is good for the team. The stuff with Zari and Constantine was pretty interesting. The only thing that I'm not a big fan of is they seem to be setting up a romance here. And I don't know, there's so many potentially, I guess, cringy things that the show could do if that ends up being a thing, because, Nate is just now getting Zari back, and he's just like, yes, we were a thing, but this isn't the same Zari, so of course she's not really going to see Nate in the same light that her old self did. And then Constantine, I mean, there's a chance that they could get Natalie back, and if so, that might rekindle the old romance there. So if they end up trying to push this romance between Zari and Constantine, I just feel like it's going to end up being this big messy thing that will take up at least an episode that I'll have to slog through. But I don't know. I mean, I get it. They are definitely bonding because they have some similarities in the loss and the desire to complete the loom for their own gain. So it's like there are certain connections, but I just don't see them as like a couple that would mesh well. So I don't want to see the show explore this, but that's clearly what they're doing. I mean, they had this whole episode essentially with just them together. Because I did wonder, they had the one scene in the Romeo and Juliet where they were playing Romeo and Juliet together, and there was just that scene where I'm just like, okay, is this them trying to set up a romance? But I didn't think much of it, and now all of a sudden in this episode, here they are pushing it forward even more. I'm like, I didn't really want to see this, but I guess here we are. See if they do anything interesting with it. But seeing some of the encores there at this little, what would it be called? Because it's Constantine's house, but I guess it's like a bed and breakfast run by the Enchantress, posing as an old lady. Pretty interesting. You got Bonnie and Clyde, you got Brutus, you got King Henry VIII, Black Caesar. I mean, just very interesting. Oh, Jack the Ripper as well. A very interesting little group there. And of course, Bonnie and Clyde are the first ones to turn on everybody because, of course, they are. They just they love shooting people. I think the characterization on all these characters is well done. So yeah, that part of it was pretty fun, seeing them all interact off of each other and turn on each other because that's just who they are. But yeah, all in all, I mean, it was a good episode. It definitely had a lot of enjoyable moments. I think that's about all I could think of, though. Like, everything else was just, nothing really stood out to me as being good or bad. It was just, I guess Ava trusting Astra so completely right off the bat, and trusting that she wouldn't turn on her, was a little naive, but I mean, I get it. It's not like she had much of a choice. Yeah, that's about it. So, what were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Legends of Tomorrow reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.